Welcome to what it looks like to test in your own studio area. I today am going to be talking about a SunGold Power 4000 watt inverter slash charger combination unit. Now this is nothing new. This design has actually been around for a while, but SunGold Power did send this over to me for review to share some of my thoughts on this product. I know the noise is absurd right now. Don't worry, I will be fixing that here in a second. I just wanted to give a brief demonstration of one of the focal points that I really wanted to test out on this inverter. And that is, on the Amazon website, it says that it has an 8 millisecond average automatic transfer time, which means that you could use this as a makeshift, albeit somewhat slow UPS unit for, depending on what electronics are going to be running, as a UPS backup. So as you can see here, somewhat over here on the side, let me see if I can move that a little bit. As you can see here, I have a 27-inch monitor and a mining rig currently running a couple GPUs, only pulling about 400 to 500 watts. Now going through and testing everything else on this, just highlighting some of the features, I'm definitely going to do that. But something I really wanted to see is if I could use this, unplug it from shore power or grid power or generator power, whatever your flavor might be, and see if it's going to interrupt the power supply to a system like this, a computer that needs constant voltage and definitely has the chance to get turned off or reset in the event of a very minute power loss. So because I'm going to be unhooking this and start talking about this just a little bit more, let's get that test out of the way. Here you see a plug-in. This is a single-ended 15 amp extension cord, which means that the other side is exposed. It didn't come with an outlet on the other end, which was perfect for plugging it into the wiring that I'm going to be showcasing a little bit later on. And it just allowed me to plug it into the wall. That's one of the great things about this compared to the previous SunGold Power thing that I have, where the other one required 240 volt connection just to charge. However, this one has a 120 out and a 120 in, meaning that you're a little bit more conveniently capable of charging and discharging the batteries that this system can use. So here's my miner. As you can see, it's running mining currently, pulling 440 watts. Let's go ahead and unplug it. And you guys can hear and see. Just like that. It's pretty nice. It automatically switches over to battery. They say this thing has about an 8 millisecond transfer time. Keep in mind that standard UPS units are usually, give or take, in that 4 to 5 millisecond switch time. 4 to 5 millisecond switch time. So a 10 millisecond switch time, albeit good for this computer specifically. It has a large power supply in there, so maybe it has a little bit of buffer there to be able to handle a higher switch time, but just kind of keep all of that in mind. It worked for my specific use case, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for every single electronic device out there or different variations of computers. Cats, can you just okay. So now that it's kicked back in, it's plugged into regular AC input. It does start charging the battery in fast mode. So let's take the second and disassemble this and take a look at some of the connections that you have through the SunGold Power 4000 watt 12 volt DC to 120 volt AC unit. First thing I want to do is switch it off. And I'm going to make a bunch of people cringe because that is the absolute worst thing to do to a computer. I know. I'm just going to move this down here. Now this is actually a 12 gauge extension cord. So you can buy the extension cord single-ended so you don't have to like cut and splice them yourself. That way you can put your own ends on them just depending on what your needs are. In my particular use case, that was perfect for this because I actually wanted to plug this in. I say all that, but I actually just bought it by accident, so it is what it is. Now for the power rating on this, I was using a kilowatt reader, and with that in mind, this thing is Usable up to about 15 amps. I've pushed them a little bit further, but I've also fried them going a little bit further. So I didn't want to do too much draw on this, and I really wanted to monitor how much output was coming out. Mainly because, and I'll get to this in a few more steps of my testing, mainly because I just wanted to make sure that I could surpass the capacity of one of the SOK batteries that I was using in order to test this unit and unplug things and see if it made that thing restart. So getting all of this wired into this, which was just a single outlet that I hardwired over here to the back, which is one of the big things with this one. It's just easy to wire everything into the back, including the AC input and AC output. If you're going to be running multiple things, you're either going to probably run a sub panel, which would be optimal, or you could kind of go other routes. But honestly, I'd recommend just running a little, miniature sub panel and just calling it a day. From the miniature sub panel, you can run to outlets, and then you could have more flexibility, especially because this unit is capable of handling 4,000 watts. So if you are running something like a camper or a van or some kind of like off-grid living, traveling, something like this could be a great budget option because really it doesn't cost too much. Check out the links in the description down below, and they have a 3,000 watt version. And I wish I would have actually requested the 3,000 watt version. I'll get to that in a second. Now, the wires that I have connected to this are definitely not optimal. I just used some pre-existing wires. These two thick ones are just ones that I had pre-made that worked. I was able to get them plugged in without any kind of hassle. So I did use two SOK 100 amp hour lithium batteries that allowed me to pretty much get this up and running and give me a total amperage capacity of 200 amps, which allowed me, based off 12 volts, allowed me to get 2,400 watts worth of usage. I only pushed this thing to about 1,800 to 2,000 watts, give or take some change, but I did my test at right around 1,700 watts, or a little bit over 15 amps. So first things first, I got to take off these terminals because I want to show you what some of the connections are, even though this is definitely not a brand new device by any means. It might be a new release of an old design, and it doesn't have some of the fancier features that you might find on some other inverter/chargers, and that's why I'm classifying this as more of a budget solution to somebody who needs power on the go, particularly maybe in a small van or something like that, and cost could definitely be an issue. Because last time I checked, this thing's in the sub $1,000 range, which isn't too bad for everything that it has to offer. Now, I'm just gonna hope these floating around like this, nothing's gonna connect. Let's just go with it. Okay, so the first things first, this is a cat that likes to be all up in my business. Boop. I want to flip this around to this side. Yes, ignore some of my crazy wiring. This is what I do. I don't apologize for my methods. I'm just gonna lift this up over here. By the way, the 4,000 watt version is 62 pounds. 62 pounds. And most of that is just because this thing has a low frequency inverter, which is actually a really good thing, especially if you're going to be running things in a camper like air conditioning units, compressors, things that need that high amperage draw just to get started. That's where something like this comes into play. Because it has such a large iron core in the transformer, it's capable of handling up to 20 seconds worth of 12,000 watt surge. So air conditioning kicks on, it needs to kick on to 6,000 or 12,000 or whatever just to get things spinning, and then it levels off. That's where you absolutely need a low frequency transformer, which is what all these units are built of. Yes, it is more expensive and it is heavy. So just keep all of that in mind. 62 pounds. It's kind of a beefy one. With that said, on the front you have some relatively beefy contacts here. So this is a positive and a negative. Each one of these comes with a cover. They are color coded. They allow you to move them around at your will. So if you have a specific placement that you want them to be. They have multiple options in order to cover and protect the both positive and negative terminals on there. That way you don't have any accidental shorts. One of the good things I like about the SunGold Power, and this is quite often found on other inverters and chargers, but this has an automatic generator start. So hypothetically speaking, you're running in a van, you have a generator, you don't want to use a generator at all times, and you want to rely on your battery a majority of the time. Well, these dip switches on the front, they all kind of have their own little options. It goes from 60 Hertz to 50 Hertz power, different input ranges. If you have more sensitive electronics, you can change the input range. You have the option to prioritize battery over shore power or vice versa. So if you decide, hypothetically, you want to prioritize battery power over shore power, of course, just being either plugging it into a wall or pulling into port on your boat and plug it into the dock. What that will do is we'll run the batteries down until the voltage trips below the threshold of which you set. Now, you don't have a lot of options here. It's either 10 volts or 10.5 volts, but depending on the draw and what you plan on running with it, depends on how you might want to configure that. And then when it gets down below that, the charger will kick in and it will charge those batteries up to full capacity, which, by the way, the battery support is up to 9 different batteries. We're talking gel AGM, lithium, sealed lead acid gel European, open lead acid, LiFePow, disulfate cycle, and classic LFP. So you have plenty of battery options in order to run this off of. Depending on your application, you might want to run something like a deep cycle marine battery, for example, something that's not going to get affected by cold as much, because lithium, even though you can use it in like sub-freezing temperatures, depending on the battery, if you charge it while it's still cold, you can end up damaging the batteries. So it is definitely a use case scenario. So they have the options to change that. And I highly recommend you doing the research based off of your environment, what you plan on using this thing for, in order to find the best possible batteries that go with this unit. But back to the auto generator start, it's pretty cool. You could be rolling down the road, you got this thing, it's running everything internally, you're good to go. The batteries drop below the threshold, boom, your generator automatically kicks on, which means the generator is not running all the time. Get a little bit of peace. You run this over the night, you got air conditioning, you run it, whatever. It kicks on only when it needs to charge the batteries back up, and then it kicks back off. Now, the previous SunGold Power that I have, which is a 240 in and out, it has the exact same feature. It has the exact same generator auto start. However, I haven't hooked up to my electrical grid through a sub panel, so it doesn't do any kind of like generator auto start, nor do I have a generator that has the option to do a remote start. But that is still a key thing. You can run, MPPT chargers or something with all kinds of solar arrays on top of your van or your RV, and that can help keep your batteries charged and ultimately prolong the amount of time you'll need to hook up to shore power and or start your generator. But it's good to have something like this as a backup, especially on a cloudy day. No matter how many solar panels you have, if it's nighttime or super cloudy, you're gonna have a bad time. Now down here, you have the ground. Now this is something you definitely wanna ground this out if you're getting everything hooked up, but you have a battery temperature sensor, which I do not have it with me. It's over there. It's literally a wire with a piece of metal on the end that you can tape to one of your batteries to monitor how hot the battery is. And because this has a variable charge rate, meaning that you can charge it, I think, up to 120 amps, you can turn that down. If you have a small power bank, you don't want to overload it, you don't want to overcharge it, and you don't want to cause damage to your batteries, you can turn that down and do more of a, I don't want to say trickle charge, but you can do just a less amperage charge to your batteries in order to maintain the lifespan of those batteries better. And then on this side, you're going to see a couple different things. At the bottom, you got the dip switches. The dip switches, you can go through the user manual. It'll tell you what each one of them are. I will read through them just real quick. Let's find it. So you have one switch, low battery trip volt, 10 volt DC versus 10.5 volt DC. Switch 2, AC input. That's where you basically change the range of which this thing is going to work on your AC input. That goes back to the whole sensitivity of the equipment you're going to be running off of it. Switch number 3, power saving auto setting. Now this says night charger function versus detect load per 3 seconds. I haven't really messed with this one too much, but here's the thing. This thing runs off of two different options when it comes to being turned on. One is power saving mode, which at idle takes 18 watts just to be on. A constant draw, 18 watts. Doesn't matter what you're using or not using. However, if you turn it all the way on, like full send on, it is on and it's drawing 44 watts consistently. You might think to yourself, that is kind of a big draw when it comes to an inverter. And if something like that is super important to you, you might want to look at some tool like a higher frequency inverter. Those are usually a lot cheaper. They don't handle as much surge power, but they might be better suited to your needs if that kind of power consumption is definitely a concern. Switch number 4 lets you switch from 50 Hertz to 60 Hertz. So that just depends on where you are and what kind of equipment you're running. And switch number 5 is that battery/AC priority. So down here, you want to make sure to configure everything to your liking. Right above that, you have the option to hook up a remote panel. So hypothetically, you want to install this in your RV and you want a little panel to turn it on and off somewhere else in your RV, then you will be able to wire a remote. Key point here though, you want this turned off, you plug in that remote, you can wire it. Actually, this is the remote, and this is literally, it's like the same exact remote I got with my previous SunGold Power inverter. That one can handle 6,000 watts, it's 240. This one can handle 4,000 watts, it's 120. But this little panel can be ran probably just about anywhere. I mean, it's just probably ran just about anywhere in an RV. It's got a long enough cable to do so, I think 100 feet. But if you set this to off, and then you can turn it on and off remotely with this, which is great because you gotta have a nice clean install tucked away somewhere. It's got good cooling, whatever. And if for whatever reason you want to turn something off just to save power, whatever the reason might be, you don't have to dig into that system. You can have this mounted somewhere for easy control. And circling back to the whole battery temperature sensor, this is the battery temperature sensor. Literally just hook this onto your battery. I usually tape mine, plug this into the port down here, and then boom. If this thing realizes that your battery is overheated, it will adjust the voltage or the amperage accordingly in order to not damage it. Now we have a couple circuit breakers here at the top, but before I talk too much about this end of the stick, I do want to say this. When they reached out to me, they say, hey, we want you to check out this other new product, LFP model series or whatever. I always see more power, more better. And I know people trigger when I say more better, but I always like more power just in case I need to hook it up to something. I don't say, well, I'm limited to this. No, I'm limited to how many batteries I currently can afford, which if you guys know anything about divorce, I can't afford any more batteries at the current time. But the 3,000 watt series of this not only is a couple $100 cheaper, so it's even more budget friendly, but it also comes with the GFCI outlet on this side that allows you to easily have something like this to plug into the other side without having to worry about wiring your own. Now, when it comes to me personally, I got everything I need in this house and then some in order to wire up a quick little outlet just to do my testing, right? It's not clean, it's not perfect, but it works and there's no flaws there. I was also able to wire in my extension cord just like normal. Everything goes through here when it comes to wiring things statically. And once you get all that done, you also have a cover that allows you to cover that just to keep yourself a little safe. But with the 3,000 watt series, if you don't think you're actually gonna need a 4,000 watt series, I definitely recommend it because you do have a GFCI outlet here, along with being able to wire everything and get the full potential of the 3,000 watts through your own hard wiring. But with the 3,000 watt series, if you don't think you're actually gonna need a 4,000 watt series, I definitely recommend it because you do have a GFCI outlet here, along with being able to wire everything and get the full potential of the 3,000 watts through your own hard wiring. Which brings me to the fan. Now, I've powered down my old SunGold Power for a while now because I've been testing this for over a month. I've been running mining machines and things like that and just kind of seeing how it's been able to handle everything. And because of that, my old system is down and I just could not remember, are the fans on all the time? Because this one is. If you turn this on, like actually on and not in power save mode, if you turn this on, the fans seem to just go full send all the time. This looks like, I want to say 140 millimeter fan. It's not super loud. It's not crazy annoying, nothing like that. But the fan doesn't really slow down that much. It just kind of runs all the time. Even in line bypass mode, where technically the inverter is not active. And if it's not charging, and it's only float charging the batteries, it's still full send. So, yeah. If you're gonna be hooking something like this up, you're definitely gonna wanna hook it into an area where a constant fan draw noise is not going to annoy the crap out of you. And that brings me to the top up here. Let's move this over here. Now, this is where things get interesting. And this design itself, like the housing, the general look of it is pretty old. And you've seen it in different brands, stuff like that. But it has a very simple readout. It'll tell you if it's running on shore power, tell you if it's, float charging, fast charging, inverter, stuff like that. It's got some very basic lights here, overprotection or over voltage protection. You have the dial here to change how fast it will charge a battery once it has shore power and it knows the battery needs to be charged. You also have a selection here to select up to 9 different battery types, which is good. Everything is nice and accessible, and you have a nice little LCD here that allows you to read as it kind of, cycles through the different readouts. It allows you to read the status of the inverter / charger. And with that in mind, I kind of get brought to a point where I have mixed feelings, right? This is a tried and true, proven form factor. The huge iron core, this is where the low frequency inverter comes in. The huge iron core in this, which adds to the cost, it adds to the weight, etc. The build quality, the iron core, everything like that allows you to run big things. We're talking, AC, compressors, toaster ovens, whatever. Things that need a high amperage draw just to get started up, and then they kind of level out to more reasonable amperage. So with the low frequency inverter, this thing can surge up to 12,000 watts for 20 seconds. Obviously, you're gonna need the batteries in order to handle that, or you're gonna be popping some fuses. But because of the low frequency inverter, it gives you that extra overhead for a decent amount of time in order to start up a microwave or whatever it is you're trying to run. And it's simplistic in design. Everything's fairly easy to use. The readout is somewhat annoying because it cycles through. I wish they would just get it a bigger screen readout and get some more information. But here's where I get kind of divided. So in this, sub 1,000 range, it just would be nice to get an updated unit, maybe an add-on or anything that allows me to connect to and manage this via Wi-Fi. Get any kind of a smart data. I want to see how many amperage it's pushing out into the batteries. I want to see what the capacity of the batteries are, or just anything. If you guys are familiar with Victron Energy, they have all kinds of stats. A lot of their stuff is Wi-Fi connected. If it's not Wi-Fi connected, you can get a central hub that makes it Wi-Fi connected. I mean, there's a lot of smart options, right? In order to get smart options on this, just like my main setup, I have to hook up smart shunts and do a bunch of things in order to have my own actual Raspberry Pi that monitors everything. But I have to kind of hook everything up to see what my system is doing, just because of the limitations of the smart abilities that this device has. So yes, I'm conflicted. On one end, it's like, God, can I get some geeky features, right? I mean, SunGold Power has some bigger units that I would love to try out personally. I don't have the batteries to actually try those out yet, and it might be a while before I could even attempt to give a review on something like that. I mean, I only have 2 right now, and that's not even enough for this thing. But SunGold Power does have options for higher end models that allows you to monitor your charger / inverter with an app through Wi-Fi and just get a little bit of a better window into the system. This obviously is a very crude setup. I have a 300 amp fuse, and that is it. I have no battery cutoff switch. I have no monitoring shunts. I have nothing else. This is literally just raw dogging this and getting it set up just for some testing, and then I'm going to move everything back in and then over to my larger 6,000 watt inverter that I have from SunGold. But this is a perfect Somewhat budget option, I would honestly recommend the 3000 watts unless you need the 4000 watts. Somewhat budget option if you're looking at setting up some sort of a power distribution system in your van or in a small RV or something like that. So again, thank you very much SunGold Power for sending this over. If you guys want to check out more about this unit, make sure to check out the links in the description down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, of course, make sure to leave those in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day. Okay, I just realized I didn't change my shirt to anything fancy. This is just the shirt that I wear around the house. Oops.